we have already dealt with reproductive rights. In this class, we will study the so-called family planning. After briefly defining it and sketching its history and methods, we will examine family planning both from a policy as well as from a human rights perspective. For most of history, the family has been considered a phenomenon of nature. Human beings reproduce and then organize around their blood affiliations, from whence bigger organizational units than the family, such as the village, tribe, or nation, eventually stem. Important technological and political developments during the 20th century have given a boost to family planning. For the World Health Organization, WHO, family planning entails the possibility that people may attain their desired number of children and determine the spacing of pregnancies, which can be achieved through the use of contraceptive methods and the treatment of infertility. This is referred to as family planning contraception. In fact, control over the natural fact of birth opened the first possibilities for family planning. Margaret Sanger, an American nurse and feminist activist, campaigned during the first half of the 20th century for birth control, a term she coined in 1914 in her own feminist newspaper, The Woman Rebel. Sanger argued that women had a right to control their bodies, including the freedom to choose when to have or not to have children. These were dangerous ideas at the time that put her at odds with American authorities. In her 70s, Sanger was still advocating female reproductive rights and was one of the people behind the political and scientific endeavors to create the contraceptive pills in the 1960s. Considered one of the major scientific breakthroughs of the century, the contraceptive pill, popularly known just as the pill, was approved for sale by the US government in 1960. With the possibility of mastering the biological outcomes of sexual intercourse, the 1960s would become known as the decade of the sexual revolution. As the direct beneficiaries of the pill were women, the second wave of feminism, already studied in this course, thrived during the years of the sexual revolution. In fact, one of the central demands of this second wave was the sexual liberation of women from their traditional role as mothers, a role previously upheld by their first wave predecessors. The WHO has identified different contraceptive methods currently in use around the world. Among the modern methods, there are regular oral contraceptives, emergency oral contraceptives, implants, contraceptive patches, intrauterine devices, male and female condoms, and male and female sterilization. On the other hand, according to the WHO, traditional contraceptive methods include the calendar methods, whereby women try to determine their least fertile day within each menstrual cycle, and the coitus interruptus technique. The expression family planning immediately begs the question, planning by whom and for what purposes? Today, the global cause of family planning and contraception is championed mainly by the WHO, which lists among its benefits the prevention of unintended, premature, or dangerous pregnancies, the reduction of infant mortality, the prevention of HIV, and the curtailment of population growth. Other international agencies dealing with this subject are the International Federation of Family Planning, founded in 1952, and the United Nations Fund for Population Activities, created in 1969. Not only international organizations, but governments as well, have showed interest in family planning throughout history. In the late 18th century, a British economist, Thomas Malthus, proposed that on account of the Industrial Revolution, population would start growing at a geometrical rate, whereas food would grow at an arithmetical rate, meaning that the demand for food would increase at a much faster rate than its supply, for the power of population is indefinitely greater than the power in the earth to produce subsistence for man. Ever since then, the curtailment of overpopulation has been a popular idea. In 1965, the President of the United States, Lyndon Johnson, declared that less than $5 invested in population control is worth $100 invested in economic growth, thus echoing the US government's policy on declared war on poverty at the time. Yet, family planning may serve multiple purposes. Accordingly, whenever a government feels that its population is scarce in terms of manpower, or even worse, in terms of an allegedly superior race, family planning turns the other way around and aims at increasing rather than decreasing the rate of births. What we should bear in mind, therefore, is that family planning policies should always be undertaken from a reproductive rights perspective, paying due regard for individual rights and for human dignity, especially regarding women as the main bearers of the natural burden of birth. In 2014, the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights stated that reproductive rights are human rights. Reproductive rights pertain to the individual's freedom to responsibly choose the number, spacing, and timing of their children. These rights include the rights to life, physical integrity, the right to marry and to found a family, privacy, information and sexual education, the right to benefit from scientific progress, the right to the highest attainable standard of health, contraceptives being among the WHO's official list of essential drugs, and non-discrimination. Regarding these last two rights, the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights has stated in its General Comment number 14 that the right to health includes the right to control one's health and body, including sexual and reproductive freedom, and the right to be free from interference. Some kinds of interference even amount to crimes under international law, including genocide through the imposition of measures intended to prevent births within a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group, and forced pregnancy and enforced sterilization as crimes against humanity and as war crimes. Other state interferences on reproductive freedom, such as the prohibition of in vitro fertilization, have been qualified as disproportionate by the Inter-American Court of Human Rights in a case against Costa Rica. As for the right to non-discrimination, individual rights must trump public policy considerations. Moreover, women's rights include protection against external interferences such as birth control sabotage by sexual partners or state and religious encroachments upon private life, on account of their special natural burden as the sole impregnable subjects of our species. Finally, the WHO defines reproductive health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, in all matters relating to the reproductive system and to its functions and processes. It includes access to safe, effective, affordable, and acceptable methods of family planning, including methods for regulation of fertility, which are not against the law. Further, sexual health is defined as the enhancement of life and personal relations, integrating the somatic, emotional, intellectual, and social aspects of sexual being in ways that are positively enriching and that enhance personality, communication, and love. Thank you for watching this lesson. Please do not forget to visit mookchile.com, and we kindly invite you to watch our next class.